Really excited to be here today with one of the authors of the book, Plant-Powered Protein, registered dietitian, our friend, Brenda Davis, back on the exam room. Thanks for being here, Brenda.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here with you, Chuck, and excited to be back at this conference. So
we are taping this at the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine 2023, which hopefully by now, as this is released, will be available on demand. If you still need CME credits, you can get them by watching on demand. But this book, what you just told me before we started rolling, this is really cool. Not only were you there with Vasanto Molina, but your son, Corey, is also a co-author in the book. How cool was it to work with your son on a project like that?
Oh, it was the best. I love working with him, and he works in with the government as a sort of a negotiator with First Nations and things like that. And but he's a professional agrologist, and he has a tremendous interest in the environment. So we thought we'd invite him to do the environmental chapter, and he said it's been one of the greatest boosts for him in his life, because all of a sudden he's doing podcasts and lectures, and he said it was like this piece was missing in my life, and it was the piece that was about the thing that I'm passionate about, which is, the world moving towards a plant-based diet and reducing suffering for animals and improving the environmental circumstances for future generations. And it was really a wonderful, wonderful thing for him and for myself as well.
He's a professional what now, though?
He's a professional agrologist.
What in the world is that?
Well, it's a scientist that it's all about land use and agriculture.
As in agriculture. Okay.
Yeah. And so he does have a couple of MBAs as well, but his PAG, he's very, very interested in land use and in terms of the raising of cattle and sort of the cost of that land use in many respects. And so he's just got a lot of interest in that area, so it was really fun to have him as part of it.
We have to get Corey on the show here for April. We'll be doing a series of Earth Day episodes, so absolutely awesome. Would love to get him. I can think of no better person. Plus he's your son, and they're all from the same tree. The apple doesn't fall far, as they say, so I'm sure he'd be great. But
that's good.
We're going to talk about something completely different today. I want to shift over and talk about one of the things you've been working on recently is nutrient requirements for older adults, seniors. A little bit different from when we're in our 30s or 40s, younger. How do they change as we get older?
Well, first of all, I'll say that, we did this plant-powered protein book. Our next book, Vasanto and myself, is going to be a book for older adults. And Vasanto's now 81. She'll be 82 on her next birthday. And I'm 64, birthday. And I'll be 65.
No, you're not.
On my next birthday, so I'll be officially a senior, and so that's part of the interest, is we're at that stage in life, but as you say, there are really big changes that happen as we age that are natural changes. But one of the things that happens is that our ability to digest and absorb nutrients diminishes. So we don't produce as much acid in our stomach. We don't produce as many of the enzymes that help to break foods down into the small components they need to be made into in order for us to absorb them into our bloodstream. And so our caloric needs tend to diminish, because our metabolism changes, and a lot of people, their physical activity declines as they get older. They just walk a little slower and so forth. So our caloric needs are diminished, but our nutrient needs are actually elevated because of our inability to absorb nutrients as well.
So that's pretty interesting, though, because I hear a lot of seniors talk about, I'm not as hungry as I used to be.
That's right.
And so if your nutrient requirements are actually elevated, but you're eating less, your appetite is diminished, how does one kind of reconcile all of that to make sure you're still getting everything you need?
Yeah, exactly. So there are three things that I would recommend. Number one is to move more. Your appetite will increase if you're moving a little more. And even if you can't do the running you used to do or the fast walking, maybe you could do swimming. Maybe, you could do a cycle class or something that will increase your metabolism a little bit. Number 2 is you really want to be eating a more what we call nutrient-dense diet. So what that means is that you want the most nutrients you can get per calorie of food you're consuming. Mm-hmm. So nutrient density is about, eating those foods that are just loaded with nutrition, but not loaded with calories. Mm. And so that's, another, a very important point. And so your volume of food can be diminished slightly, but the nutritional value of what you're eating is just greater. So you're eating less of those foods that fill you up, like that don't have a lot of nutrients. So you might use fewer oils. You might use less, concentrated carbohydrate, white rice, or these kinds of foods with a lot of calories and not a lot of nutrients. And so that's super important. And then number 3, I would say, is that you might want to consider some supplementation. And it could be just a multivitamin that's got a broad range of nutrients. So you get a little extra zinc and selenium and magnesium and so on, B12 and iodine. And that can just top you up enough to help you get to where you need to be. So I think those 3 things are probably the most important.
So let's kind of paint a picture. I'll give you a hypothetical scenario. Say that you've got somebody who's 87, starting to have some health challenges, maybe has fallen a couple of times, but caveat here being they are on a few medications. They don't get up out of their chair much. They kind of sit and they watch TV all day. Breakfast is something like Frosted Flakes and a couple of powdered donuts. Lunch is like peanut butter crackers and iced tea with some Splenda. Dinner, maybe a ham sandwich and a bag of potato chips. And this is what the 87-year-old eats. And, this is what they have been eating virtually their entire life. They may feel trapped in this body, and that no matter what they do, they're going to feel weak, they're going to fall. And so that's the reason why they don't get up out of the chair and walk. Without getting into specifics about this case, what would happen by and large if that person were then to start to eat a more nutritious diet and got out of their head, got over their fear, walked around a little bit more? Could they still kind of recapture a little bit of youth that they thought that maybe they had left behind 20 years ago?
Well, first, Chuck, I think that your example may not be that realistic because the guy would probably be dead already. Eating the way that you described that he was eating. But there are always exceptions to the rule. The people that smoke a pack a day and still are alive at 100. But this diet is so bad. And what's bad about this diet and the way that he's living, the lack of activity and so on, is there are drivers of disease. And the drivers are things like inflammation, oxidative stress, dysbiosis, a very unhealthy gut microbiome. You know all about that. And lipotoxicity is where you're storing, fat in places it shouldn't be stored, like your liver and pancreas and so on. And everything he's doing is fueling those 4 things. And so his chances of living much longer are probably pretty slim. But if he starts to make changes, and this is the thing that never ceases to amaze me, it is so fast that your body starts to rebuild itself. And I can remember when I was doing research in the Marshall Islands on people with some of the highest rates of diabetes in the world. When we started our program, within a week, people were saying, my head has been fuzzy for 10 years, and all of a sudden, it's clear. I've had pain here, there, and everywhere, or I couldn't barely walk across the room without pain. and it's gone. Like, I can't believe it's gone. It'd be a week or two from when we started. So it's the thing that people have to remember is every single cell of the human body is a product of what we put in our mouth. We literally, it's our raw materials with which we build our brain cells and with which we feed the microbes in our gut, and we rebuild ourselves. And so we rebuild ourselves quickly. And so as soon as you start supplying what your body really needs, your body wants to be healthy. Your body wants to survive. It wants to build itself in, to give itself the best chance of survival. And so it's just amazing what starts to happen. So his dysbiosis will start to decline, his inflammation, his oxidative stress. He'll, start to lose weight, get more energy, and he'll not be constipated anymore. And, it just goes on and on and on. And your body he'll just start to feel more energetic and will be more apt to want to get off his chair and walk around a little bit. So I think that's really the good news, is that it's your body can heal itself. But the only way it can do that is if you supply the raw materials with which it needs to rebuild itself. And so, he's got a chance. He's got a chance at, we think of often lifespan. We talk about lifespan and we want to live to be 100. But what it's really about more is our health span. And we want to, the years that we're on this planet to be enjoyed to their fullest. We want to be able to go and see the places we want to see and engage with our families and do fun things. And so that's, to me, what it's all about. And that's one of the beauties of the people in the blue zones, where they, live, not only they have more centenarians than anywhere else on the planet, but what's even more cool to me is that those centenarians are still out in their gardens, or they're walking up the mountains, and they're doing things. They're still productive, and that's what it's really all about. And so there's hope at any age. There's hope.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like we're hearing more and more and more about needing that purpose, in life, and that's what keeps us around and healthy and happy. And we're hearing stories. I've told it a number of times recently on the show, even about, reading this article in the Washington Post about a guy who lived well over 110, and, even past 100, he would be out Saturday mornings washing a car in the driveway, not his car, his girlfriend's car that stayed in the driveway from the night before. You know what I'm saying? And this guy's over 100 years old, and he's hand washing this car. He lived to a ripe old age. He had that purpose. He never lost that zest for life. It's so important.
Yeah, so important. And after you shared that story, I have to share a story as well. I had an aunt who lived to be 106.
Nice.
And when she was about 87 years old, we went for a walk in the woods together. And when she was in her mid to late 90s, the thing that she would do is help the senior citizens by doing their grocery shopping, and she'd play piano and sing for them, and she'd just do all sorts of things. But when she was 87, we were walking through the woods. She was telling me about when she had cancer and was in the hospital for a month when she was in her late 40s or early 50s, something like that. And I didn't know her well because my mom was adopted at birth, and this was a birth family aunt that we were reunited with later in life.
Yeah.
And so she was sharing this story with me, and I looked at her and I said, that must have been so difficult to be in the hospital for a month. And she looked at me and she said, oh, no, dear. She said, it was just lovely. She said, I didn't have to do a thing. She said, it was like being in a hotel or being on vacation. She said, no laundry, no cooking, no cleaning. She said, it was just lovely. And I thought, this lady's going to live for a long time.
Perspective.
Perspective.
Wow, right? Who wants to go to the hospital? And she's like, no, it was a vacation. Are you kidding me? That's awesome. Man. And I can't also help but to think that, as she's in her 90s and helping other seniors out, those seniors are probably a few years younger than she was.
Exactly.
That is amazing. That's goals right there. That's goals right there.
Sure is. That's my goal.
Let's circle back and get a little nutrition nerdy here. Let me ask you about some of the nutrients that might be even a little bit more difficult than others for seniors to absorb. Are there some that as we age, like it just takes the body a little bit extra effort to break down than when we were younger?
Yeah, so one of the nutrients that has really been in the limelight lately is protein.
Shocker.
So shocking. So the RDA for protein for adults is 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight per day, and a kilogram is 2.2 pounds. And for seniors, many experts are now recommending 1 to 1.2 grams per kilogram per day. And the reason is that when seniors are consuming these higher levels of protein, they tend to have fewer of the sort of the diseases or conditions of aging, like sarcopenia, which is muscle wasting and as we age, and frailty and things like that. And so, some countries have actually changed their RDAs. So Australia has separate RDAs for older adults. The Nordic countries all have separate RDAs for seniors. So there's starting to be change in that way. And so there was actually even a study in 2022 suggesting that seniors shouldn't be vegan because of the concern about not getting enough protein. And so it's something that people are thinking about. My perspective is different because, yes, it's true that plants are less concentrated in protein than meat, for example. However, the people that consume plant protein have far lower risk of death and disease. That matters for seniors. And there were actually a couple of studies that looked at the risk of frailty and the consumption of plant versus animal protein. And people who were consuming plant protein actually had lower risk of frailty. And of course, 70% of the global population will die of a diet and lifestyle-induced chronic disease. And so that's got to be priority number one. So to me, it's to tell seniors not to be vegan or not to get most of their protein or all of their protein from plants is really misleading people, because what they're likely to die of are diseases that are increased by animal protein and decreased by plant protein. So to me, the goal is not to eat animal protein and not plant protein. It's to make sure that you get enough plant protein. And so a lot of seniors sort of go sort of an easy route with food, and they might eat a lot of, tea and toast diets are popular with seniors. And so they like food to be simple. And so we need to figure out how to make getting plant protein easier, less work, and delicious for seniors. And so things like tofu can be really wonderful additions to the diet because it's a very digestible protein, and it's easy to prepare. It's something that can be used in all sorts of dishes. Using a legume-based pasta rather than just a regular pasta can be an easy way for seniors. And even some of the veggie meats that are a little bit processed can be really easy, especially for a senior man who just isn't cooking much. Pull it out of the freezer and cook up that patty with some veggies, and at least it's a fairly concentrated protein source. But one thing that I tell seniors is think about protein at each meal. So if you're having a bowl of oatmeal for breakfast, don't just have oatmeal and bananas with almond milk. If you take that meal and it's got maybe 5 to 8 grams of protein, you could put that up to 20 grams just in an instant by using soy milk or pea milk in place of almond milk, by adding some hemp seeds and some almonds to the cereal. And just little things like that can boost intake very quickly. And you haven't really changed the meal or the quantity of food you're eating much. It's just adding a few things in. If you're having a salad at lunch, or a smoothie for that matter, With the salad, you could put some little cubes of tofu, some lentils, some seeds on top. You could have a seed-based dressing, for example. Or if you're not into eating stuff that takes a lot of time to chew, because you don't, your dentition isn't quite as good and you prefer doing a smoothie or a soup. It's the same thing. Instead of making a smoothie with water and fruits and a few greens, you add hemp seeds and add frozen peas and add, the soy milk to boost protein by 20 or 30 grams in a flash.
How prevalent is protein deficiency in seniors? I know, even just speaking a minute ago with Christopher Gardner, as we take this again, we're at the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine, so just wrapped with him. But, he was saying that oftentimes in his lectures, he'll, ask the physicians who are in attendance to raise their hand if they've ever seen a patient with protein deficiency. And no hands in the room go up. But I'm wondering, if there's a geriatric doctor among the crowd, if they may be more likely to raise their hand there, or is it still virtually unheard of in these well-developed countries?
It's absolutely not unheard of, and I see it all the time.
Do you? Okay, talk to me.
And so yes, and I'll tell you, the last person that I dealt with was a lady who was her hair was falling out. She was getting such thin skin, it was bleeding and bruising all the time. She had edema in her belly, or bloating. She didn't have a lot of energy, and we looked at all of her nutrients, B12 and so on, and she was taking the supplement she needed, and so I said, well, let me analyze your diet, and I analyzed it, and her protein intake was probably 35 to 40 grams a day, which, is not a lot. And I said, let's boost your protein to 60 or 70 grams a day. And we'll do it, with beans and hemp seeds and all of that. Her problems have all virtually disappeared. Wow. She's now 83. We started together when she was, a couple years ago now. But she said her skin doesn't break or bruise anymore. Her hair's not falling out anymore. So she was definitely at a level of protein. Now, we don't see protein deficiency like kwashiorkor here in North America. That's, just not seen. But we do see seniors especially who are getting insufficient amounts. And so you can't just, assume that you can eat your brown rice and vegetables and you're going to get enough as an older adult, because you probably won't. And so those are the kinds of things that I see, and I've seen in a number of people, remarkable recoveries in the quality of their skin and their hair and so forth when they do improve their protein intake a little bit. So it's not the kind of deficiency that we think of when you see the child in, these impoverished countries with the bloated stomachs and the, all of the huge malnutrition issues. But we still do see consequences of just not getting quite enough.
But it's interesting, even without that big distended belly, you mentioned bloating was still one of the symptoms with this woman.
And I was surprised about that. I told her I don't think her bloating has anything to do with the protein. I wouldn't imagine it would in her case. But she said it's gone down.
Wow.
Yeah, she said it has, and she's feeling so much better. And she said, I'm looking better, and I'm older, not younger. So she's just thrilled to bits. And she said it frustrates me to no end that physicians don't have any clue that this could be an issue.
And at what age should somebody start looking at ratcheting that up? Is it 65? Is it 40? Is it 50?
Well, it's all over the place because we're not all the same, of course.
Right.
We all have unique differences, but most of the countries that are recommending higher amounts for adults, it's usually either over 65 or 65 plus, so 66 or 65. It's always in that area. Australia, it's 70 that they recommend 25% higher intakes for adults 70 plus. But it's generally in that range. And so I would say when you're in your even 60s, you're starting to probably require a little fewer calories. And so one of the things that I've done, I'm in my 60s and my writing partner's in her 80s, and we both do this. We tend to focus a little bit less on the starchy foods and a little bit more on the higher protein foods. So my meals, instead of having the bowl with a lot of quinoa and then, the ton of vegetables and then a little bit of beans or something on top, I would have a smaller portion of quinoa, still the ton of vegetables, but be a little more generous with the beans or tofu on top.
There you go.
And it's the same on my salad. Sometimes I'll, be very sparse with the grains and or sweet potatoes or whatever, and I'll have a little bit more of the beans or tofu there because I just don't need as many calories. So,
but you're not describing a massive change to what it was you had been eating at all. It's a relatively minor tweak.
Yeah. It's just tweaking and being a little bit more conscious. So if I have, a snack, for example, I might think about, if I'm having an apple, having a little nut butter with it or something like that, just to boost things a little bit. And there's still a lot of question marks, but certainly one of the things we want to do as we get older is to preserve our muscle mass. And so, I don't just make these tiny tweaks in my diet, but I've also, not slowed down with my physical activity either.
Sure.
And I'll continue that for as long as I can. And I make sure I get weight-bearing exercise. So I do, kickboxing and HIIT classes and all of that, but I also do some weight classes.
Okay, I'm scared of you.
And
Kickboxer over
kickboxing.
So I guess my final question for you, though, is, if somebody has gone down the road like this patient you were talking about, they've got the muscle wasting, all these other symptoms. I mean, is it possible to regenerate, have the body heal itself? What are some realistic expectations the average person could look for?
Absolutely. And so, but it's not just food, it's exercise. And so you need to be doing the weight-bearing exercise and you need to be eating an adequate diet. So you want to focus a little bit more on the protein than you might have, than what we needed to do when we were younger. But you also need to think about vitamin B12, vitamin D. Some folks fall short on iodine, selenium, zinc is an issue because the outer surface of the skin has a lot of zinc, and if that starts to go, it can affect the quality of your skin as well. So that's where eating a very nutrient-dense diet, being sure that you have a reliable source of B12, vitamin D. The other thing, which may be contrary to some of the things that we've talked about in terms of disease risk reduction, is fat. And so fat is really important for healthy skin and hair as well. And as we age, our ability to absorb reduces. So we don't want to necessarily cut back on the nuts and seeds and avocados, and those kinds of foods can play a very valuable role. And then omega-3 fatty acids can be very important. And as we age, our ability to convert plant omega-3s into the long-chain omega-3s will be diminished as well. And so taking an EPA DHA supplement may be of value too. So there's a number of things that we can do. So, number one, we want to focus on food. We want to focus on fitness. And then think about potential for some supplements as well.
There it is. I love it. Real Talk with Brenda Davis. You're so much fun when you're on the show. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
The book is Plant Powered Protein. Go ahead and pick up your copy. Congratulations. Can't wait to see what the future holds for you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Chuck.
If your health IQ is a couple of points higher than it was a few minutes ago, go ahead and like this video or subscribe to the YouTube channel. And to take it even higher, head over to Apple Podcast or wherever you get your favorite shows. Look for The Exam Room by the Physicians Committee. Hit the subscribe button there as well and help to make your world a healthier place.